My name is Lucy Bennett. I'm 33 years old, and 7 weeks after I walked away from a relationship that looked stable from the outside, I finally understood something I should have seen much earlier. That when someone starts redefining needs to justify secrecy, the relationship is already over. I just hadn't admitted it yet. Not until that Friday night. On paper, Daniel and I made sense. We lived in a clean, modern condo in Tampa, floor-to-ceiling windows, neutral furniture, the kind of place people compliment when they don't know what else to say. Everything looked balanced, controlled, intentional. I worked in procurement for a medical distribution company. Structured, predictable, stable. I made just over $90,000 a year. Daniel was different, more fluid. He worked in client partnerships for a boutique marketing firm. His income came in waves, sometimes impressive, sometimes uncertain. He called it freedom. I used to admire that. Now I realize it gave him room to move in ways I couldn't track. Daniel was the kind of man people noticed. Easy smile, confident posture, that precise kind of eye contact that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. He knew when to laugh, when to lean in, when to lower his voice just enough to make a sentence feel personal. Looking back, that was probably the first warning. Some people don't just know how to talk, they know how to steer. For months, something had been off. Not loud, not obvious, just wrong in a way I couldn't prove. More late dinners that ran over, more moments where his phone would tilt just slightly out of view. More nights where he came home smelling like places we had never gone together. And every time I asked, he didn't get angry. He got annoyed, like my questions were the problem. Lucy, you're making normal things sound ugly. You need to stop looking for problems that don't exist. So I did what people do when they're afraid of losing something that still looks intact. I made myself smaller. I stopped asking follow-up questions. I softened my tone. I let silence fill in where honesty should have been. And for a while, it worked, at least on the surface. Then came the launch dinner. Daniel told me it mattered that I showed up. Said people notice the partners who support you. Said it reflected on him. So I went. Straight from work, changing in the office bathroom, rushing across downtown traffic, paying too much for valet because the lot was full. I carried the champagne he had asked me to bring, rehearsing polite introductions in my head. The rooftop was loud. String lights. Open bar. The skyline glowing behind glass walls. Everyone looked like they were performing a version of themselves. Daniel kissed me on the cheek when I arrived. Quick, distracted. He took the champagne, introduced me to a few coworkers too fast to remember, then drifted away, toward her. Her name was Vanessa. I already knew it. She was the one I had been told not to worry about. She's just dramatic, he'd said once. She flirts with everyone. It's exhausting. That explanation made sense at the time. Now it felt rehearsed. I stayed polite, made small talk, smiled when expected. Eventually, I found myself near the indoor bar, waiting for sparkling water because I still had to drive. That's when I heard him laugh. Not the social laugh. The real one. I turned slightly. He was maybe 10 feet away, partially hidden behind a divider planter. Vanessa was standing close to him. Another coworker lingered nearby, her name, Elise, drifting back into my memory. I wasn't trying to listen, but then I heard my name. Elise said, "So what happens if Lucy finds out?" There was a pause. Daniel took a sip of his drink. Then he said casually, like it was nothing, "Lucy notices patterns, not details. That's why this works." Vanessa laughed. Elise muttered something about it being risky. Daniel shrugged, and then he said it. I needed something she stopped giving me. Something inside me went still. Not anger, not panic, just clarity. That quiet internal shift where denial runs out of space to hide. I waited. Waited until Elise got pulled away by someone calling her name. Then I walked toward him. "Can we talk?" I asked. He looked irritated immediately. Vanessa looked entertained. That told me more than anything else. We stepped toward the service hallway, just out of earshot. I repeated exactly what I had heard. Word for word. He didn't deny it. That was the worst part. He crossed his arms like I was the one creating inconvenience and said, "Lucy, I needed something you stopped giving me." I just stared at him. He softened his tone slightly, like that would help. "I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just needed to feel wanted again." That sentence might have worked on me months earlier, maybe even weeks. But standing there under restaurant lights, knowing the woman he chose was just a few steps away, pretending not to watch, all I felt was tired. Tired of second-guessing myself. Tired of adjusting to fit something that kept moving. So I nodded once, and I said calmly, "Then she can have the rest too." He blinked. "What?" "Then she can have the rest too," I repeated. "We're done." He looked stunned. Not guilty. not ashamed. Stunned, like I had skipped a scene he was expecting, like I was supposed to cry, to negotiate, to ask questions that gave him room to explain. Instead, I gave him nothing. "Don't do this here," he said under his breath. I held his gaze. "You already did." Then I walked away. By the time I reached the valet stand, my phone had already started vibrating. "Lucy, pick up. You're overreacting. It's not what you think. Come back upstairs. Don't humiliate me like this." That last one almost made me smile. I didn't reply. I drove home, took off my shoes, and started packing. Not angry, not rushed, methodical. Like I was finally finishing something that had been quietly ending for months. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken, but because I was focused. There's a difference. Heartbreak is loud. It pulls you into memories, into questions, into all the things you wish you had said differently. What I felt was quiet, precise. Like every unanswered question I had ignored over the past few months had finally aligned into something simple enough to act on. So I packed. Not chaotically, not destructively, carefully. Daniel's clothes were folded into storage bins, categorized without me even thinking about it. Work shirts, casual, gym. His shoes paired and wrapped. His watch box taped shut. His grooming products sealed into zip bags so nothing would spill. The framed print he insisted made the living room feel more upscale went back into the original box in the hall closet. The spare duvet his mother bought him last Christmas got vacuum sealed because I already had the bags. I didn't rush. I didn't hesitate. At 11:14 p.m., I booked a locksmith for the next morning. At 11:21, I emailed building management. Daniel Bennett is no longer authorized for resident access or garage entry, effective Friday at noon. At 11:39, I texted my neighbor, Graham, 52, retired Coast Guard, the kind of man who treats nonsense like something that needs to be contained quickly before it spreads. "Can you stand by tomorrow for a pickup?" He replied in under a minute. "Sure, what time?" "Afternoon." "Got it." Daniel called 13 times between midnight and 1:30 a.m. Left 2 voicemails. The first one was sharp, frustrated. "Lucy, this is insane. You don't end 3 years over one conversation. Pick up the phone." The second one, softer. There were tears in it. "Lucy, please don't make a permanent decision because of one ugly moment. You heard one sentence out of context." One sentence? Not an affair. Not betrayal. A sentence. I stared at my phone while it played. Then I set it face down and kept packing. By morning, everything that belonged to him was stacked neatly by the door. The locksmith finished by 9:10 a.m. I tested the new lock twice. Not because I thought it would fail. Building management confirmed his garage access had been deactivated. At 12:06 p.m., I sent one message. "Your things are packed. Pick up windows. 2 o'clock, 3 p.m. or 6 o'clock, 7 p.m. Graham will be present. Choose one." He replied instantly, "You changed the locks." "Yes. You can't throw me out over one mistake." I stared at that word. Mistake. "This is not a conversation," I typed. "Pick a time." A minute later, 6 o'clock. He arrived at 6:18. Not alone. Of course not. His friend, Riley, stepped out of the passenger side first, scanning the building like she was walking into something unstable. Daniel followed. Baseball cap pulled low. Sunglasses, even though the sun was already dipping behind the buildings. He was wearing the gray hoodie I used to steal from him after long days when I wanted comfort without having to ask for it. Now it just looked like a costume. Graham stood beside me near the lobby cart, arms crossed, presence steady and silent. I made 2 trips. That was all it took. Everything reduced to labeled bins and suitcases. Daniel stared at them for a long second. Then he looked at me. "So that's it?" "Yes." "Lucy, come on," he exhaled, pulling his sunglasses off. "Over one mistake?" I met his eyes. "No, over what that mistake says about everything else." Riley stepped forward slightly, like she was about to soften the moment, smooth the edges. Graham cut in before she could. "Let's keep this moving." His tone wasn't aggressive, just final. And it worked. Public spaces have a way of stripping emotion down to its essentials. No scenes, no drawn-out arguments, just action. Daniel knew that. He loaded the bins into the SUV one by one. Slower than necessary, like time itself might change something if he stretched it long enough. When the last suitcase was in, he turned back toward me. "You're going to regret being this cold," he said, "when you calm down." I didn't move. Drive safe. That was it. No shouting. No tears. No second chances disguised as conversations. Just an ending. Or at least, that's what I thought. 3 days later, I got a text. Unknown number. She knows she handled it badly. Can you at least tell her this isn't permanent? I stared at the message. Not apologize. Not explain. Reassure. Like I was still responsible for managing his emotional stability after he had already replaced me. I replied once. It is permanent. Do not contact me again. Then I blocked the number. The next day, his sister, Megan, called. We had never been particularly close. She didn't waste time. Lucy, Daniel told me what happened. He said things have been complicated for a while. Complicated. I leaned back against the kitchen counter. Affairs aren't complicated, I said calmly. They're decisions. There was a pause. She tried again. He says it wasn't serious. I let out a small breath. Serious enough to hide. Serious enough to lie. Serious enough for me. Silence. Then she shifted tone. You don't just throw away 3 years without trying to fix it. I looked around my condo, at the empty spaces where his things used to be, at the quiet. I didn't throw anything away, I said. He did. I hung up. Blocked her number. By Monday, Daniel had moved online. Subtle at first. A black background quote about how men get punished for being honest about their emotional needs. A brunch photo captioned something about choosing peace over control. I didn't look for it, but people send things. Jenna, one of our mutual friends, texted me screenshots. Is this about you? I stared at the words. Then I sent her exactly one thing. A screenshot of his message from that night. Don't humiliate me like this. And a photo of the labeled bins in the lobby. Her reply came fast. Oh, that's not what he told people. No, it wasn't. That was the first crack. The second came Tuesday morning. I was walking through the office garage, coffee in one hand, keys in the other, when I saw him, leaning casually against the wall near the elevator, wearing my old navy hoodie, holding a paper bag from the cafe downstairs. Like this was normal. Like this was a scene he had already planned. I stopped a few feet away. You can't be here. He smiled. Soft, familiar, controlled. I just want 5 minutes. No. Lucy, please. I know how it looked, he said quickly, stepping forward slightly. I didn't move. It looked like an affair, I replied. Because it was one. He flinched. Just for a second. Then he recovered. That's not the point, he said. We were already broken before that. There's something unsettling about watching someone try to rewrite reality in real time. Like if they say it calmly enough, clearly enough, it might become true. I held his gaze. Leave. He stepped closer. If you throw away 3 years over one need, I finally admitted. I turned and walked straight to building security. Hi, I said evenly. I need this documented. The word hit him instantly. Documented. His expression shifted. Wow, he said, a sharp edge creeping in. So now I'm dangerous? I didn't answer. Because at that point, I was starting to realize something. This wasn't about regret. This wasn't about fixing anything. This was about control. And control doesn't stop just because you walk away. That afternoon, HR called me. Not casually. Not as a routine check-in. There was a careful tone in the woman's voice, the kind people use when they're trying to stay neutral in a situation that's already leaning towards something else. Lucy, we received a call this morning, she said. A man asked whether employees here are allowed to abandon partners after contributing to emotional neglect. I didn't even need to ask who it was. I closed my office door. I have documentation, I said. I can forward everything. There was a brief pause. Yes, she replied, almost relieved. Please do. So I did. Screenshots, call logs, the timeline from the rooftop dinner, the garage incident, every message that showed a clear pattern of contact after I had already told him to stop. Within an hour, they flagged his name. Not formally, not yet, but enough that if he showed up again, it wouldn't be brushed off as a misunderstanding. At 11:47 p.m. that night, my phone buzzed again. Blocked number, voicemail. I almost didn't listen to it, but something made me press play. I can see your kitchen light on. I froze. I know you're home, Lucy. Please stop acting like I'm a stranger. The message ended. And for the first time since the rooftop, something shifted inside me. Not fear. Awareness. That sentence meant one thing. He had been outside. Close enough to see my windows. Close enough to watch. I sat very still for a moment, replaying it in my head. Then I opened my laptop. The next morning, I filed a police information report. Not dramatic, not emotional. Structured. Screenshots, call logs, the garage incident, the HR note, the voicemail transcript, the pickup timeline. Paper matters. That was the moment the story changed. Because up until then, this had been a breakup. Messy, painful, complicated. Now, it was something else. And the strange part? I felt calm. Not happy, not healed. But steady. like I had finally stepped into something solid after months of standing on unstable ground. I started sleeping through the night again. I signed up for the certification course I had been putting off for months. I went back to the gym. Consistently. My condo felt different. Not empty. Quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask anything from you. Thursday night, I got an email from him. Subject line: please let me explain the difference. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. 4 paragraphs. Apology wrapped in justification. He said he was sorry if his words had been harsh, but I had been emotionally distant. He said he hadn't meant to hurt me, but I had stopped seeing him. He said what happened with Vanessa wasn't the point. It was just the symptom. There it was again. Reframing. Repackaging. Trying to turn a decision into a reaction. I didn't reply. I closed the email and moved on. Friday evening, after class, I grabbed dinner with someone from the course. His name was Brian. It wasn't a date. Not really. Just easy conversation. Work stories, travel complaints. The kind of interaction that doesn't require you to measure every word. No tension. No hidden meaning. Just normal. And apparently, that alone was enough. Because 3 weeks after the rooftop dinner, Daniel shifted again. The fake emergency came first. Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something told me to answer. Lucy? A woman's voice said, breathless. This is Talia. I work with Daniel. I stayed quiet. He's at urgent care, she rushed on. He had a panic attack. He keeps asking for you. I think if you call, it might help calm him down enough for them to release him. I didn't respond right away. I just listened. Something about the tone felt off. Too urgent. Too rehearsed. Which urgent care? I asked. She told me. I hung up. Then I called the clinic directly. No patient by that name, the receptionist said. I tried a second location. Nothing. I stared at my phone for a moment. Then I texted Talia. There is no Daniel at either location. Do not contact me again. No reply. 2 days later, reception carried a flower arrangement to my desk. White roses. Glass vase. 3 coworkers watching as it was set down in front of me. The card read, "We were real before she was. Please don't throw us away." I looked at the words for a long moment. Then I took a photo of the flowers. The card. The florist label. Reception told me the order had been placed under a fake name. But the callback number? His. Into the folder. Then he contacted my mother. That part almost impressed me. The reach. The confidence. Like he still believed he had access to every part of my life. My mom called that evening. "Lucy," she said carefully, "why is this man telling me you abandoned him after he admitted he'd been feeling neglected?" I didn't get defensive. I didn't explain emotionally. I just forwarded everything. The timeline. The screenshots. The voicemail about my kitchen light. The fake urgent care call. The flowers. There was silence for a while after she read it. Then she called me back. "Let me get this straight," she said slowly. "He cheated, got caught, and now wants me to scold you for not being gentle about it?" "Yes." A pause. Then, firm, "Absolutely not." I leaned against the counter, exhaling quietly. She continued. "I told him if he contacts me again, I will happily sit next to you in court." I smiled slightly. "Thank you." That same night, another message. Another unknown number. "Getting your mother involved is low." I didn't reply. I didn't block it immediately either. I just took a screenshot, added it to the folder. Because at this point, it wasn't about reacting anymore. It was about building something clear, a pattern. And patterns are hard to argue with. By the time I contacted an attorney, I wasn't emotional about it anymore. I was organized. There's a difference. Emotion asks questions. Organization answers them. His name was Andrew Keller. Straightforward, mid-40s, the kind of man who doesn't waste words trying to sound impressive. I paid the consultation fee, $240, and handed him everything. Screenshots, call logs, voicemails, the garage incident, HR documentation, the flower delivery, my mother's interaction, the fake urgent care call. He went through it slowly, not reacting, just reading. Then he looked up at me and said, "You already have enough for a cease and desist. If he approaches you again after that, we escalate." I nodded. "Do it." The letter went out Monday, email and certified mail. Clear language, no ambiguity, no contact, direct or indirect. For 48 hours, nothing happened. And for a brief moment, I thought that might be it. That maybe finally he understood. I was wrong. Wednesday night, after certification class, Brian and I stopped for dinner near Hyde Park. It was quiet, easy, normal. We were halfway through paying the check when I felt it. That subtle shift in the room. I turned, and there he was. Daniel, standing a few feet away from the table. wearing the green shirt I bought him last summer. Hairstyled, expression carefully controlled. Like he had prepared for this. Like he thought presentation would fix perception. He looked at Brian first, slowly. So this is why you moved on so fast. Brian didn't react. He just watched him. I set my card down on the table. Daniel, leave. He ignored me, still looking at him. Be careful, he said softly. She seems calm, but she can shut you out the second you don't meet her expectations. That was the moment something inside me settled completely. Not anger, not even irritation. Just certainty. I said his name once. Firm. Final. Daniel. He turned to me. You couldn't even fight for us, he said, over one mistake. Brian reached for his phone. The second he noticed, he reacted. Fast. His hand came down hard, knocking it out of his grip. The sound cracked against the floor. Everything shifted instantly. A server rushed over, then a manager, then security. And like a switch had flipped, Daniel's entire demeanor changed. His shoulders dropped. His voice broke. Tears. I just wanted to talk, he said, shaking his head. She won't even give me a chance to explain. The performance was almost precise, almost convincing. If I hadn't already seen the pattern, police were called. Statements taken. I didn't argue. Didn't explain. I just handed over my phone. And then, the folder. Everything. Screenshots, voicemails, timeline, even the printed copies I had started carrying in my bag. The officer flipped through them, slow and quiet. Then he looked at me. You need to get ahead of this, he said. I nodded. I already am. The next morning, I filed for a temporary protective order. Affidavit. Attachments. Clear sequence of events. Repeated unwanted contact after explicit request to stop. It was granted that afternoon. No contact. No third-party communication. Stay away from my home, workplace, car, and certification program. He was served Monday. And somehow, even that wasn't enough. 2 days later, another voicemail. Blocked number. You really made me look dangerous because I cared enough to fight for you. I didn't listen to it twice. I didn't think about it. I forwarded it directly to my attorney. Added it to the hearing packet. Because at this point, there was no confusion left. Meanwhile, life kept moving. I passed my certification exam. My manager mentioned I was being considered for regional lead. Brian and I kept seeing each other. Slow, steady, no pressure. The kind of connection that doesn't need to prove anything to exist. The hearing was scheduled just under 2 months after the rooftop dinner. He showed up in a neutral outfit. Soft expression, measured posture, like he had studied how remorse is supposed to look. His attorney framed it predictably. Emotional distress, a painful breakup, attempts at closure that had been misinterpreted. My attorney didn't argue emotionally. He didn't need to. He just walked through the timeline. The rooftop. His statement about needing something I stopped giving him. The breakup. The packing. The controlled pickup. The messages. The garage incident. The HR complaint. The voicemail about my kitchen light. The fake emergency. The flowers. Contacting my mother. The restaurant confrontation. The violation after the temporary order. No opinions. Just facts. Because when you remove emotion, patterns speak for themselves. His attorney tried one last angle. Said the relationship had already been failing. That what happened was complicated. That context mattered. My attorney asked one question. When you were confronted at the launch dinner, did you say you needed something she stopped giving you? Daniel hesitated, then nodded. In context, yes. That was enough. The judge read quietly for a few minutes, then looked up. Whatever happened inside the relationship ended when she told you it was over, he said. Everything after that is repeated unwanted contact. This court does not accept romantic justification for harassment. That was it. 18-month protective order. No contact. Stay 300 feet away from me. My home, my work, my routine. Any violation, consequences. Daniel cried. Real tears. Or maybe not. At that point, it didn't matter. Because he still looked at me like he expected something after. A conversation. A moment. Closure. There wasn't one. My attorney walked me out through a side exit. People like him think they're defending one mistake, he said. They don't realize the case is about everything that comes after. Exactly. A few things settled after that. Jenna apologized. Said she hadn't known the full story. His sister sent a short message. Said she understood now. I didn't reply. Vanessa, she disappeared from the picture. Not surprising. People who agree to exist in secrets rarely stay once everything becomes public. As for me, life became steady. In the best way. The promotion came through. Regional lead. Better money, more travel. Brian and I stayed simple. Honest. Calm. He knew everything. Had seen the order. And still stayed. My condo felt like mine again. I repainted the spare room, donated the things that never really felt like me, got rid of the candles he insisted made the place feel complete. Turns out, peace doesn't need decoration. I've thought a lot about why it ended so quickly for me. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the entitlement inside it. The assumption that his needs justified secrecy. That I would hear his explanation and immediately start competing for my own relationship. That I would take responsibility for something he chose. No, that was his mistake. He thought betrayal would trigger negotiation. Instead, it triggered clarity. If someone cheats and then explains it as something you failed to give them, pay attention. They're not confessing. They're assigning blame. And that's not something you fix. My name is Ella Simmons. I'm 33 years old, and the moment everything changed, didn't feel loud. It felt quiet. So quiet that if you weren't paying attention, you might have missed it completely. I work as a project manager, mostly remote. Structured hours, predictable workflow, the kind of life where things don't spiral unless someone actively pulls them apart. I've always liked that. Stability isn't boring to me, it's clarity. Daniel Morrison was different. He was 30, worked in pharmaceutical sales. His life moved faster than mine. Flights, conferences, client dinners, conversations that stretched late into the night. Where I built systems, he built impressions. At the beginning, I thought that contrast made us stronger. Balance, we called it. We had been together for 3 years, living in my apartment for almost 1. On the outside, it looked solid. No drama, no constant checking in, no jealousy. I trusted him. And I didn't say that lightly. I used to believe something very simple. If you have to monitor someone to feel secure, then the relationship is already broken. So I didn't track him. Didn't question his schedule. Didn't ask for proof. I gave him something that felt rare now. Complete freedom, paired with complete trust. And for a long time, I thought that meant we were healthy. Last month, Daniel told me about a work conference in Cancun. 5 days. Big one, he said, standing in the kitchen while I made coffee. Mandatory attendance, Q1 strategy, client networking, the whole thing. He even showed me an email from his boss. Company letterhead. Clean formatting. It looked real. I have to present, he added, rubbing the back of his neck like he was nervous. Not a huge part, but still, it matters. I remember looking at him and smiling. You'll be great, I said. And I meant it. The night before his flight, I helped him pack. Folded his shirts the way he liked, slipped in the shoes he always complained about, but still wore because they looked right. I even added a small note in his bag. Something simple, something supportive. At the airport, I hugged him longer than usual. I'll miss you, I said. He smiled, kissed my cheek. It's just work stuff, Ella. Boring meetings, PowerPoints. I'll be back before you know it. I watched him walk through security. I didn't feel anxious. I didn't feel suspicious. I felt calm. That's what real trust looks like, I thought. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't hover. It just exists. I didn't know yet that there's a difference between trust and blindness. I learned that 2 days later. It was around lunchtime. I was at my desk, half working, half scrolling through Instagram the way people do when their brain needs a break. That's when I saw it. Mariah's story. Daniel's friend. The video was loud. Music, laughter, sunlight reflecting off water. A beach club somewhere in Cancun. People dancing, drinks raised, bodies moving like it was the middle of a vacation, not a professional event. And there in the background, Daniel, shirtless, sunglasses, holding a drink, laughing like he didn't have a single responsibility in the world. I paused. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was explanation. Maybe this is part of the conference, I thought. Networking events can be like that. I'd heard stories, sales culture, bonding, informal connections. So I kept watching. Then the next story played. Daniel was in a pool, on someone's shoulders, laughing. Mariah's caption appeared across the screen. Trip energy. No work, just vibes. Not conference. Not networking. Not mandatory attendance. Just a trip. Something inside me shifted. Not dramatically. Not explosively. Just slightly out of place. Like the floor had moved half an inch and my body hadn't caught up yet. I stared at my phone longer than I needed to. Then I closed the app. Then I opened it again. The video didn't change. The caption didn't change. The truth didn't change. That night, Daniel texted me. Long day. Sessions ran late. I'm exhausted. Miss you. I looked at the message for a long time. Still not angry. Just clear. My fingers moved slowly as I typed back. Those PowerPoints must have been intense. 3 dots appeared. Then his reply. The worst, but making good connections. I stared at that message. And for the first time since I met him, something inside me went completely still. Not heartbroken, not furious, just awake. I didn't confront him. That's the part most people don't understand when I tell this story. They expect shouting, accusations, late-night arguments filled with screenshots and trembling voices. But none of that happened. Because by the time the truth becomes undeniable, emotions don't always rise. Sometimes they settle. And when they settle, they become something far more dangerous than anger. They become clarity. The next morning, Daniel posted on his own Instagram. Not a story this time. A full post. Perfect lighting. Beach behind him. Sunglasses angled just right. The kind of image that looks effortless but takes 5 attempts to get. The caption made my stomach tighten. Not because it hurt, but because it revealed everything. Imagine being so insecure you need to track your partner's every move. Trust issues are exhausting. Real ones don't question your grind. I read it twice, then a third time. People flooded the comments. You tell them, independent king. Some people can't handle success. They didn't know. Of course they didn't. They were reacting to a version of reality that didn't exist. A version where Daniel was working hard, and I was the invisible, controlling girlfriend he was rising above. The irony almost made me smile. Almost. Because here's the truth. No one had been tracking him. No one had questioned him. I hadn't even looked for anything. I found the truth by accident. And somehow, he still needed to turn himself into the victim. That's when I understood something important. When people lie, they don't just lie. They build an entire world around that lie, where you become the problem for noticing. I sat there for a few minutes. Then I did something simple. I commented one line under his post. Imagine being single. No emojis. No explanation. Just that. Then I closed the app, opened my profile, and changed my relationship status. Single. No announcement, no caption, no emotional speech. Just a quiet shift. The kind that doesn't ask for attention, but changes everything. After that, I stood up from my desk, walked into the bedroom, and looked around. His jacket was still hanging on the chair, shoes near the door, phone charger plugged into the wall. All the small signs of someone who thought they were coming back to the same life. I took a slow breath. Then I started. Not out of anger, out of decision. I texted my landlord first. Hi, can you remove Daniel Morrison from the building access list today? Our apartment used a keycard system. If your name wasn't registered, your card stopped working immediately. The reply came within minutes. Done. Next, I called my phone carrier. Daniel was on my plan. I scheduled his line for removal in 48 hours. Not immediate. Just enough time for things to settle into reality. Then I walked through the apartment again, this time with purpose. I opened the closet, folded his clothes neatly into suitcases. Shirts first, then pants, then the jackets he insisted were essential for networking events. His toiletries went into a box, shoes lined up carefully. I even packed his watch and jewelry case without disturbing the arrangement. I wasn't trying to punish him. I wasn't throwing things, breaking things, destroying anything. That's not who I am. I just wasn't willing to live in a space that still pretended we were together. By the time I finished, the apartment felt different, quieter, cleaner, like something had been removed that didn't belong anymore. Then I sat down and opened my phone again. This time, not to scroll, to document. I screenshotted everything. Mariah's beach club stories, Daniel's pool videos, his post about trust issues, the fake conference email he had shown me. Every piece of the narrative he had built. Not for revenge, but because something in me understood. If someone can lie this smoothly, they can lie again. And louder. By that evening, my phone started lighting up. At first, it was subtle. What does your comment mean? Are you two okay? Then Daniel's messages came. Ella, what's that supposed to mean? Is this a joke? This isn't funny. I didn't respond. Then the calls started, one after another. FaceTime requests, voicemails. I let them ring. Watched the screen light up. Watched it go dark again. Then the tone shifted. Ella, answer me. What's your problem? You're overreacting. I still said nothing. He tried other apps. WhatsApp, Telegram, even LinkedIn. That one almost made me laugh. Finally, a message came through. I'm at a work conference. I can't deal with your drama right now. We'll talk when I get back. I stared at that line. Even now, even with everything visible, he still chose the lie. Still positioned himself as the reasonable one. And me as the disruption. That was the moment something closed inside me. Not slammed shut. Just clicked into place. I picked up my phone and typed my final message. No need. Your things are packed. Safe travels. I hit send. Then I blocked his number. Not dramatically. Not with shaking hands. Just done. I didn't block Instagram. Not because I wanted to watch him, but because I wanted to see what story he would tell next. Because people like Daniel don't stop at one lie. They escalate. And I had a feeling he wasn't finished yet. Daniel came home 3 days later. Not to me, not to us, but to the version of reality he thought was still waiting for him. I wasn't there when he arrived, but I didn't need to be, because the building told the story for me. His keycard didn't work. Of course it didn't. His name was no longer on the resident list. He tried again. Then he buzzed the apartment. I was sitting on my couch, phone in my hand, watching the screen light up with the building's number. I knew it was him. I let it ring. Silence, in moments like that, says more than anything you could pick up and say. He called again, and again. Then the lobby phone. I didn't answer any of them. Later, my neighbor Terrence filled in the details. He has a talent for noticing everything that isn't his business. According to him, Daniel stood in the lobby for almost an hour, pacing, calling, running his hand through his hair like he was trying to think his way out of something that didn't have an exit. At one point, Mariah showed up. She tried to help, used her phone to call me, buzzed random apartments, claiming there was an emergency. But the building doesn't run on emotions. It runs on systems. And in that system, Daniel didn't exist anymore. Eventually, security stepped in. He wasn't a resident. He was disturbing people. They asked him to leave. And that's when things shifted from private consequences to public unraveling. Because Daniel did what people like him always do when they lose control. He went online. His Instagram stories started appearing one after another. Just got back from a work trip to find out my ex locked me out. This is insane. Then another. 5 days of meetings and presentations, and this is what I come home to. And another. Ladies, this is what happens when insecure women can't handle a successful man. She's threatened by my career. I watched every story, not reacting, just observing, because the cracks were already showing. People in his comments started asking questions. Wait, weren't you at a beach club all week? I thought this was a trip? What presentations? You literally posted pool videos every day. The narrative he built was collapsing in real time. Within an hour, the stories were gone. Deleted. But deletion doesn't erase impact. Screenshots don't disappear. And Daniel forgot something important. His coworkers followed him. The next morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something in me told me to answer. Hello? Is this Ella Simmons? A man asked. Yes. This is Robert Costanos from Vertex Pharma HR. For a brief second, my stomach tightened. Not out of fear, out of anticipation. I'm calling regarding Daniel Morrison, he continued. He listed you as an emergency contact. We've been trying to reach him. He hasn't shown up for work in a week. No calls, no notice. A quiet pause settled between us. I leaned back slightly. He told me he was at a company conference in Cancun, I said. Silence. Heavy this time. Then Robert spoke again. We haven't had any conferences this month, certainly not in Cancun. Another pause. Did he tell you it was a work event? Yes, I said. He showed me emails, said it was mandatory. His tone shifted. More serious now. Would you be willing to forward those emails to me? There it was. The moment. The one people always imagine differently when they're not the ones in it. Because part of me, the version of me that had loved him, hesitated. Not long, but enough to notice. Should I protect him? Should I stay out of it? Should I let him fix his own mess? But protecting someone who lies like that doesn't protect them. It teaches them that no matter what they do, someone will absorb the consequences for them. And I wasn't willing to be that person anymore. I'll send everything, I said. I forwarded the emails, the ones with the company letterhead, the ones that looked real until you looked closer. Then I sent the screenshots, the beach posts, the timestamps, the captions, the contradiction between what he claimed and what he showed the world. An hour later, my phone rang again. I'm Miss Simmons, Robert said. Thank you for sending this. His tone was measured, professional, but there was something underneath it. These emails were fabricated using our company branding. That constitutes fraud. We'll be handling this internally. I didn't ask what that meant. I already knew. Daniel was fired by lunchtime. Just like that. 3 years of a career undone in a single day. And the thing is, he still didn't know I knew everything. He was still focused on his image, still trying to control the narrative. That afternoon, he posted again, a long caption this time, about mental health, about needing space, about how toxic relationships can impact your career. He framed it like he was stepping back, choosing himself, like everything happening was intentional. But then he made another mistake. He applied for unemployment, listed hostile work environment as the reason. The unemployment office contacted Vertex. Vertex provided documentation. Fraud. job abandonment, false claims. His application was denied. By Wednesday, he was out of options. And that's when he came looking for me. Not to apologize, not to understand, but to find someone to blame. By Wednesday afternoon, security called my office. Ella, there's someone here asking for you. I already knew who it was. There's a certain kind of inevitability when consequences catch up to someone. They don't process it quietly. They look for the nearest person to hold responsible. And in Daniel's world, that was me. When I walked into the lobby, I almost didn't recognize him. Not because he looked completely different, but because the version of him I had known, the composed, confident man who could talk his way through anything, was gone. His hair was messy, not styled, just neglected. His clothes were wrinkled, like he had slept in them. There was no polish left, no performance, just panic. "We need to talk," he said the moment he saw me. His voice wasn't controlled anymore. It was tight, frayed. "No," I replied calmly. "We don't." His eyes widened, like he hadn't prepared for that answer. "You got me fired." I held his gaze. "I answered HR's questions," I said. "You got yourself fired." He blinked rapidly, like he was trying to force reality to shift back into something he could manage. "I can't believe you'd do this over a stupid Instagram post." That sentence almost impressed me. Not because it was clever, but because it showed just how far he was willing to twist the truth to protect himself. "The post wasn't the problem," I said. "You lied about a work conference. You created fake emails. That's fraud." He waved his hand dismissively, like I was exaggerating. "It was just a few days off. People do that all the time." "No," I said quietly. "They don't." That's when the cracks broke open. Not controlled tears. Not the kind that invite sympathy. Real ones. Messy. Unfiltered. "Where am I supposed to go?" he asked, voice shaking. "I can't pay my car without a job. I don't have anywhere lined up. Ella, please." And in that moment, I felt something I didn't expect. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Clarity. Because this wasn't about love anymore. It wasn't about betrayal even. It was about consequences. And the only reason he cared now was because he was finally the one paying for them. "You should have thought about that before you lied," I said, "before you mocked people for wanting honesty." "That post wasn't about you," he said quickly. I tilted my head slightly. "Then who was it about?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth didn't support him anymore. It just exposed him. I took a breath. "We're done," I said. "Your things are in storage unit B12. First month's paid. After that, it's on you." I held out the key. He stared at it like it meant something bigger than metal and plastic. "You planned all this," he whispered. "The moment I saw your post," I said, "I understood everything clearly." Security stepped closer. "Sir, you need to leave." Daniel looked at me one last time. "I loved you." I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. "You loved what I provided," I said. "Stability, trust, a life you thought would never question you." As they guided him toward the door, he turned, desperation twisting his voice. "You'll regret this. You'll never find anyone like me." I met his eyes, calm. "That's the plan." That night, he went online again. Long video this time. Emotional. Rambling. Trying to stitch together a story where he was the victim. He said I was controlling. That I had collaborated with HR to destroy his career. That I couldn't handle his success. It might have worked, if there wasn't already too much evidence. His former coworkers started responding. One comment. "Wait, you said you were at a Q1 conference. I was at that. It was in Dallas." Another. "Didn't you use sick leave last month and post from Vegas?" And then came the one that ended everything. A woman named Rashida. She posted a long thread. Detailed. Specific. Unavoidable. She said she had covered for Daniel more than 20 times in the past year. That he claimed conferences while she handled his workload. That she had been written up twice because of his absences. She ended it with something simple. "I hope Ella stays strong. People like this don't stop unless someone stops protecting them." That thread spread fast. Not just gossip, a warning. Because this wasn't just about a relationship anymore. It was about a pattern, a lifestyle built on lies. Daniel tried one last angle. He started a podcast. Episode 1, When Love Becomes Control. He wanted sympathy, an audience, a way to reshape the narrative. I didn't respond, didn't argue, didn't defend myself publicly. I just told people one thing when they asked. "Listen to his episode," I'd say, "then check my album, called Conference Proof." Screenshots, emails, timestamps, his own captions contradicting his claims, his termination notice, the denied unemployment claim. Truth doesn't need volume. It just needs consistency. The podcast didn't last past one episode. 2 weeks later, I ran into Mariah at a coffee shop. She looked uncomfortable the moment she saw me. "Ella, hey," she said. "Mariah." She hesitated. I didn't know he was lying about work. He told us you knew about the trip. I nodded slightly. Of course he did. No, really, she insisted. He said you were okay with it, that he just had to tell his job something. An arrangement where he lies to everyone, I said quietly. She exhaled. He's staying with his parents now. Can't find work. Everyone knows. I didn't react. She still cares about you, she added quickly, then corrected herself. He does. I mean, he keeps talking about you. I let out a small breath. He cared about what I allowed him to get away with, I said. That's not the same thing. She didn't argue. She just left. A week later, I heard the final piece. His car was repossessed. Missed payments, months behind. Even before Cancun, which meant the lies were never just about me. They were everywhere. His mother called me after that. Soft voice. Confused. He said you ruined his life over a vacation. I kept my tone respectful. He lied about work. Created fake company emails. He was fired for fraud. I just told the truth when HR asked. Silence. Then a quiet, broken, "Oh, we've been defending him," she whispered. I never tracked him, I said. Never questioned him. I found out by accident. Another pause. I need to go, she said. And that was it. Even his family couldn't hold the story together anymore. As for me, I'm okay. Better than okay. A few weeks ago, I started seeing someone new. His name is Adrian. He's steady, grounded, honest in a way that doesn't need performance. He shows me where he is, not because I ask, but because there's nothing to hide. One night, he asked me something simple. Do you want to share locations? Just for safety. I thought about it. About Daniel. About everything. Then I shook my head gently. I'm good, I said. Just text me when you get somewhere safe. Adrian smiled. That's surprisingly healthy. I smiled back. I learned the difference the hard way. Because here's the truth. I never needed to know Daniel's every move. I never asked. I never checked. I gave him complete trust. And he used that trust to lie. To manipulate. To build a version of reality where honesty looked like insecurity. He once said, imagine being single like it was something to fear. But when I imagined it, I didn't see loneliness. I saw peace. Freedom from someone who confused trust with permission. In the end, we were both right. Just not in the way he thought. My name is Alice Monroe. I'm 37 years old. And 7 months after I walked away from a relationship that looked stable from the outside, I finally understood something I wish I had seen sooner. That when someone starts redefining respect to always mean obedience, the relationship is already over. I just hadn't admitted it yet. Not until that Friday night. On paper, Ethan and I made sense. We lived in a brick townhouse in South End, Charlotte. The kind of place that photographs well. Clean lines, neutral tones, the illusion of balance. I worked as a logistics manager for a regional freight company. Steady income, structured life. I made around $91,000 a year. Ethan was different, more fluid. He worked in event consulting, jumping between contracts, sometimes bringing in good money, sometimes barely anything at all. He said it gave him freedom. I used to admire that. Now I realize it gave him excuses. For the last year, Ethan had been talking about respect the way people talk about something essential, like oxygen. Like something he was constantly being deprived of. If I asked him to check with me before spending large amounts from our joint account, I was controlling. If I reminded him we had bills before booking another luxury weekend, I was unsupportive. If I didn't immediately agree with him, I didn't respect him as a man. The strange part was, respect only ever seemed to flow in one direction. Toward him. Never back to me. The townhouse we lived in, it was mine. I bought it 2 years before I met him. We had a prenup. Simple, clean, practical. At the time, Ethan smiled and said he liked that I was organized. Looking back, I think he liked that I was predictable. Friday night was what broke everything. He had been pushing for 3 weeks to use $7,400 from our emergency fund for what he called a branding retreat in Scottsdale. It wasn't a retreat. It was a long weekend with his sister Kayla and 2 women from Instagram, one of them Morgan, who called themselves luxury mindset coaches. 4 days at a resort, spa packages, photo shoots, champagne networking. It sounded like a performance pretending to be a business expense. I said no. Not loud, not emotional, just no. We were standing in the kitchen. I had just come home from work, still in my office clothes. He had his laptop open on the island, the resort page glowing like it was supposed to convince me. This is an investment, he said, tapping the screen. In my image, in my future. Our emergency fund is for emergencies, I replied calmly. Not poolside photos. He stared at me for a second. Not angry. Not yet. just stunned that I had said it. Then came the speech. A real partner, he said slowly, would want me in rooms like this. I didn't respond. A real partner wouldn't make me beg. I'm not making you beg, I said. I'm protecting our finances. His expression shifted, something colder. A real partner, he continued, wouldn't nickel and dime me like I'm someone you're still evaluating. That landed differently, because suddenly I wasn't his partner anymore. I was beneath him. I'm not evaluating you, I said quietly. I'm making a responsible decision. That's when he crossed his arms, leaned back slightly, and said the line that ended everything. Sleep in the guest room tonight, until you learn respect. He didn't raise his voice. That made it worse. It sounded rehearsed, controlled, like a rule he had already decided to enforce. I remember standing there with my hand still on the fridge door, just looking at him, waiting for something, maybe a hint of hesitation. There wasn't any. He expected me to react, to argue, to apologize, to negotiate my way back into his version of approval. That's how it always worked. Except this time, something inside me didn't move. All right, I said. That caught him off guard. You could see it in the way his eyes narrowed slightly, like he was recalculating. Good, he said after a second. Maybe some space will help you think. Maybe it will, I replied. Around 8, he grabbed his bag and announced he was going out with Kayla and Morgan. Said he wasn't going to spend the evening around negative energy. Right before he left, he paused at the door. Don't wait up. There it was. The final little twist. He always needed the last word. Okay, I said. Then I turned back to the sink, rinsed my plate, and went upstairs. And I did exactly what he told me to do. Not symbolically. Literally. I moved into the guest room. Charger, laptop, clothes for a week, toiletry bag, and one more thing. The folder from my office safe. Prenup, mortgage documents, tax returns, joint account statements. I sat at the small desk in that room until nearly midnight. Scrolling, screenshotting, documenting every transaction, every transfer, every time business expenses turned into dinners, clothes, or trips. The more I looked, the clearer everything became. This wasn't one argument. It was a pattern, and for the first time, I wasn't trying to explain it away. At 7:35 the next morning, I called a family lawyer. By 9:10, I was sitting across from him downtown, explaining everything in the simplest way I could. Not emotional, not dramatic, just facts. My boyfriend told me to sleep in the guest room because I wouldn't give him $7,400 from our emergency fund. The lawyer nodded once. If you're done, he said, stop acting like you're half done. That sentence stayed with me. By lunchtime, I had a new bank account. My paycheck rerouted. The joint account restricted to essentials only. Mortgage, utilities, groceries. Nothing else. I removed my card from his digital wallet access, changed passwords, paid the legal retainer. Clean, precise, final. At 1:17 p.m., Ethan texted me. A mirror selfie from brunch, mimosa in hand. Hope you're thinking. I looked at it for 3 seconds. Then I locked my phone. That night, he came home just before midnight. Perfume, confidence, expectation. He knocked on the guest room door once. Alice. I opened it. He leaned against the frame, studying me. So, he said lightly, have you had enough time to cool off? I held his gaze. I met with a lawyer this morning. Everything on his face disappeared. For a second, he laughed. A reflex. Over what? One fight? I shook my head slowly. It wasn't one fight. Silence. It was the pattern, I continued. The way you talk to me. The way you try to control things. The way respect always seems to mean I'm the one adjusting. His expression hardened. You're being dramatic. Maybe, I said, but I'm still done. He stared at me for a long second, then turned and walked away. That night, he slept in the master bedroom. I stayed in the guest room, wide awake, but calm. Calmer than I had been in months. Not happy, not devastated, just finished. 5 days later, Ethan learned I wasn't bluffing. Apparently, the exact moment happened in a salon in Dilworth. I only know that because my phone lit up with 6 missed calls in under 3 minutes, followed by a single text. What did you do? I let it sit for a moment before calling him back. He picked up immediately, already mid-sentence, voice sharp and raised. You cut me off in public. Do you have any idea how that looks? I leaned back in my chair, calm. I didn't cut you off. The joint account is still active. It's covering the mortgage, utilities, and groceries. That's not the point, he snapped. My card declined in the middle of an appointment, Alice. People were watching. I could picture it. The mirrors, the stylist pretending not to listen. That account isn't for luxury spending anymore, I said. We talked about this. No, he shot back. You decided that, unilaterally. I let out a slow breath. And you decided I wasn't allowed in my own bedroom until I learned respect, I replied evenly. That was also unilateral. Silence, then a scoff. So now you're punishing me? No, I said. I'm setting boundaries. That word seemed to irritate him more than anything else. He hung up without another word. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I opened the message. This is Kayla. Financial abuse is disgusting. Fix this before Ethan decides to tell his side publicly. I stared at it for a second, then blocked the number. Some people only show up when there's chaos to amplify. Morgan called next. Of course she did. Her voice came through smooth, controlled, like she was narrating a scene she already thought she understood. Alice, she said softly, Ethan is not okay. He's humiliated. He's spiraling. You need to think about what you're doing to someone who's only ever wanted partnership. I let her finish. Then I said, partnership isn't ordering someone into a guest room because they won't fund your weekend. There was a pause, a real one this time. That's not how he explained it, she said carefully. I figured, I replied, and hung up. That was the moment I understood something clearly. Ethan wasn't just reacting. He was curating. Every version of the story he told made him the victim and me the obstacle. And for a long time, I had helped him do that. The next move was more his style, more polished. He showed up at my office. The receptionist called up around noon. Your boyfriend is here with lunch, she said, her tone light, like it was something sweet. I closed my eyes for a second. Of course he was. I went downstairs, mostly because I didn't want a scene in the lobby. He stood up the second he saw me, holding a takeout bag from my favorite sandwich place. That soft, practiced smile was already in place. The one he used when he wanted to look reasonable. Can we not do this in front of people? He said quietly. I stopped a few feet away. Then you shouldn't have brought it to my workplace. He extended the bag toward me, like we were a couple in a commercial. I didn't take it. I've had a few days to think, he continued, lowering his voice. We both escalated. Let's just reset. Reset, like nothing had happened. Come back to our room tonight, he added. We'll move on. Our room. That was the first time he'd said that since he sent me out of it. I looked at him for a moment. Then I said, no. He blinked, caught off guard. Alice, he said, tone tightening. Don't be stubborn just because your ego got bruised. I let that sit between us. Then I nodded slightly. Thank you, I said. For what? For proving my point. And I turned and walked back inside. I didn't look back. Later, the receptionist brought the sandwich upstairs, unsure what to do with it. I gave it to one of the warehouse drivers heading out for a delivery. That evening, Ethan went online. He didn't mention me directly. He wouldn't. Instead, it was quotes. Carefully chosen words about healing, about boundaries, about emotional safety. One post read, some people confuse control with love. Another, never beg for softness from someone committed to misunderstanding you. The comments filled quickly. Hearts, support, people telling him to stay strong. I didn't respond. I didn't correct anything, because the truth didn't need to be loud. It just needed to be documented. That week, I focused on things that felt strangely grounding. I met with my lawyer again and signed the separation paperwork. I booked 3 sessions with a therapist. I started running in the mornings before work. Short distances at first, then longer. The rhythm helped. The quiet helped. I cleaned out the garage one afternoon and found boxes of my father's tools, still unopened. Ethan had always said they made the place look cluttered. I opened them anyway, held each piece in my hands like I was remembering something I had almost forgotten. What it felt like to own my space. To not have to justify it. On Thursday, something unexpected happened. His mother, Dana, called me. I stared at the screen for a moment before answering. I expected a lecture, or blame. Instead, she sighed. I asked Ethan what happened, she said. I got 3 different answers in 10 minutes. I didn't interrupt. So I'm asking you, I told her. Everything. Not exaggerated, not softened. Just the truth. From the argument, to the guest room, to the financial changes, even the receipts, the spending, the pattern. There was a long pause on the other end. Then she exhaled slowly. I'm embarrassed to say this, she admitted, but none of that surprises me. Something in my chest shifted. Not relief exactly, but validation. He's always confused being supported with being entitled, she continued quietly. I thought he'd grow out of it. I didn't say anything. I guess I was wrong. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was honest. Before we hung up, she added one more thing. Do what you need to do, Alice. Just keep records. I will, I said, and I meant it. Because by then, I understood something clearly. This wasn't about one argument. It wasn't about money. It was about control. And once someone loses control, They don't let go quietly. 3 weeks after the night Ethan told me to sleep in the guest room, he stopped trying to look reasonable and started trying to create panic. It began at 11:48 p.m. on a Tuesday. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Kayla. Ethan is in the ER. He asked for you." No hospital name, no details, just urgency packed into a single sentence. Old me would have reacted immediately. Called, rushed, apologized for things I hadn't even done yet. This version of me stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, "Which hospital?" No response. 10 minutes later, Ethan called from his own phone. His voice was different, weak, shaky, almost fragile. "Alice," he said softly, "I didn't want to worry you, but I had a stress episode. The doctors are concerned." I listened, counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. "Which hospital?" I asked. A pause. Not long, but long enough. Presbyterian, he said. I leaned back slowly. "Good," I replied calmly, "because your mother just told me you're at Kayla's apartment watching reality TV." Silence. Complete. The crying stopped instantly. Not faded. Stopped. Then the line went dead. I didn't call back. I forwarded the message thread and call log to my lawyer. His reply came less than a minute later. "Keep everything." That was the moment the situation shifted from emotional to strategic. 2 days later, Ethan escalated again. This time he filed a police report, claiming I had stolen his grandmother's dining set and a vintage diamond ring. I remember reading the report summary and feeling something unexpected. Not anger, not even shock. Just clarity, because neither item existed. The dining set in the breakfast nook had belonged to my father. I had photos of it in my old condo years before I even met Ethan. And the ring? Apparently it was a family heirloom he had never once mentioned in 7 years together. Never worn, never photographed, never insured. And somehow it had disappeared from a house he now claimed he was too unsafe to enter. 2 officers came by that Friday afternoon. I invited them in, showed them everything. Old photos, the prenup attachment inventory, even a message from Ethan months earlier asking if he could repaint my dad's ugly chairs. One of the officers actually looked uncomfortable. "This is a civil matter," he said carefully. "You should handle it through legal counsel." "I am," I replied. They left within 15 minutes. No drama, no confusion, just facts. That night, Ethan made his boldest move yet. He used the old garage keypad code and let himself into the house. I wasn't there. I was at my brother Owen's place, watching a game. But the security system caught everything, every second. I watched the footage later that night. He didn't steal anything. He performed, opened cabinets, pulled clothes from the laundry shelves, knocked 2 framed photos off the hallway wall. Then he stood in the kitchen, crying, phone in hand, angle carefully set, recording himself. 6 minutes. 6 full minutes of controlled emotion. When I got home, the house was quiet, except for the glass on the floor near the entryway and the voicemail waiting on my phone. "I know your car is here," his voice said. "Don't hide from your own partner." I didn't respond. I called my lawyer. By Monday morning, everything moved quickly. He filed for exclusive use of the house during the separation and a temporary no-contact order. Harassment, false reporting, unauthorized entry. All documented. The hearing was that Thursday. Ethan arrived dressed carefully. Neutral tones, soft expression, controlled posture, like he was stepping into a role he had rehearsed. His attorney spoke more than he did. Framed it as emotional distress, miscommunication, a painful breakup. My lawyer didn't interrupt. He just handed over the binder, 2 inches thick. Texts, financial records, the fake ER message, the police report, security footage stills, voicemail transcripts, everything. The judge flipped through it for less than 10 minutes, then looked directly at Ethan. "Did you instruct Miss Monroe to sleep in the guest room until she learned respect?" Ethan shifted slightly. "That was taken out of context." "Yes or no?" the judge interrupted. A pause. Yes." "Did you enter the residence after being told to coordinate through legal counsel?" I was emotional. "That is not an answer." Silence. My lawyer said very little. He didn't need to. The evidence spoke clearly enough. The ruling came quickly. Exclusive use of the house granted to me. No contact except through attorneys. No visits to my workplace, no unannounced appearances. Boundaries. Enforced. Ethan's expression during that moment. It wasn't anger. It was disbelief. Like consequences were something that happened to other people, not him. After the hearing, Morgan tried to approach me in the hallway. "Alice," she said urgently, "he's not doing well. He's falling apart." I looked at her, really looked this time. He should probably stop making my life his main focus, I said calmly. Then I walked past her and didn't stop. The strange thing was, after that, everything went quiet. Not perfect, but quiet. No late night calls, no dramatic messages, no surprise appearances. Just space, real space. I started sleeping through the night again. 3 weeks in a row. No waking up at 2 a.m. with that tight feeling in my chest. I enrolled in a management certification course I had been putting off for months. Started cooking again. Actual meals, not rushed dinners eaten in silence. I repainted the guest room, got rid of the dull gray Ethan had picked, chose something warmer, something that felt like mine. I changed the garage code, replaced the broken frames. And one evening, I took one of my father's old tools and placed it on a shelf in the den, right where Ethan used to say it didn't fit the aesthetic. For the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel like something I maintained for someone else. It felt like mine. And more importantly, I felt like myself again. 4 months after the night Ethan told me to sleep in the guest room, everything ended on paper, quietly. No dramatic courtroom scene, no final explosion, just signatures. My lawyer had recommended mediation first, said it would save time, money, and avoid unnecessary theatrics. He was right. By the time we sat across from each other in that conference room, Ethan didn't look like the same man who had once leaned against a doorway and told me to learn respect. He looked smaller, tired. The confidence was gone, replaced with something more fragile. Not quite regret, not quite defeat. Just absence. Kayla wasn't there. Morgan wasn't there. None of the people who had texted me about financial abuse or supporting your partner showed up when real documents were on the table. It was just the two of us. And the truth. The numbers were simple. Because of the prenup, the townhouse remained mine. Because I had kept records, every transaction, every account summary, there was no argument about ownership. My retirement account stayed mine. My truck stayed mine. The joint savings, after expenses, held just over $17,000. Ethan received half. $8,500. Clean. Final. He kept his car. He kept the decorative furniture, the art pieces, the things he had insisted made the house feel elevated. The wedding gifts and storage went with him. There was no alimony, no claim on the house, no lingering financial ties. Done. My total cost, all in, came out to just under $15,000. Legal fees, security changes, storage and moving costs. Even a missed consulting weekend because of court. Every dollar felt intentional, not wasted. Invested. At one point during the mediation, Ethan leaned back in his chair, exhaled, and said something that almost made me pause. I still don't understand why you took it this far, he said, over one comment. I looked at him, really looked this time, and I realized something. He still didn't see it. It wasn't one comment, I said quietly. The room went still. It was every time you turned respect into control, I continued. Every time you made me feel like I had to earn basic decency. Every time you used money, or public moments, or pressure to manage me. He didn't respond, because there wasn't anything to say. The guest room wasn't the problem, I added. It was just the first time you said it out loud. That was the moment something shifted. Not between us. That was already over. But inside me. Clarity. Fully settled. The papers were signed shortly after that. No raised voices. No last-minute arguments. Just finality. As we stood up to leave, I felt lighter than I expected. Not happy, but free. Outside in the parking lot, Dana caught up with me. She looked older than I remembered, more tired. I'm sorry, she said simply. For what? I asked. For ignoring who he was becoming, she replied. I kept thinking he'd grow out of it. I shook my head gently. You don't owe me an apology. Maybe not, she said, but I'm giving you one anyway. There was a pause. Then she added softly, for what it's worth, peace will look good on you. She was right. 2 months after everything was finalized, I got promoted. Regional operations lead. More responsibility, more income, and somehow less stress than I had ever felt at home. I took a long weekend by myself. No plans, no obligations, just space. I remember sitting at breakfast one morning, halfway through my coffee, and realizing something strange. I hadn't checked my phone in over an hour. Not because I was distracted, but because there was no one left in my life who used silence as a weapon. That felt new. Around that same time, I met Daniel. It wasn't dramatic. No overlap, no revenge, no complicated backstory. We had met briefly months earlier through work, then ran into each other again at a small coffee place near the park. We talked, then had dinner, then another. There was no pressure, no hidden meaning behind simple messages. The first time he texted, made it home safe. Drive was easy. I found myself staring at my phone for a second, because I wasn't used to communication that didn't feel loaded. Ethan, last I heard, moved into a condo with a roommate on the other side of the city. Posting quotes, talking about betrayal, about healing, about rising from difficult relationships. That's his story now, not mine. Mine is simpler. When someone turns love into a system where one person ranks above the other, leave. When respect starts to sound like obedience, leave faster. A relationship cannot survive when one person becomes the judge, the authority, the one who decides what is acceptable, and the other keeps trying to earn their place. I spent too long believing that patience would fix things. That calmness would teach him how to be fair. It didn't. It just taught him how much I was willing to tolerate. The night he told me to sleep in the guest room, he thought he was putting me in my place. What he actually did was make the truth impossible to ignore. And that was the real turning point. Not the paperwork, not the money, not even the ending. The clarity. Because once you see the pattern clearly, the rest is just logistics. And logistics? That's something I've always been very good at. My name is Vivian Beaumont. I'm 35 years old, and the moment everything changed didn't sound like anything at all. It felt quiet. So quiet that if you weren't paying attention, you might have mistaken it for peace. Aaron once stood in our kitchen, leaning against the counter like he was rehearsing something, and said, "Maybe you need to step back for a while. Think about what you're risking." And I remember something inside me didn't break. It didn't even crack. It just stilled. Not anger. Not panic. Just clarity. At the time, I don't think Aaron understood what that silence meant. But I did. Before I met Aaron Hale, my life had a structure I trusted. I worked in operations for a regional building supplier. Systems, timelines, predictable outcomes. My days were built on things that made sense. If something broke, you fixed it. If something didn't add up, you followed the numbers until it did. I liked that. I depended on that. Aaron didn't. He was 32, worked in vendor relations for a medical software company. His world wasn't built on systems. It was built on impressions, conversations that stretched too long, dinners that turned into networking, late nights that didn't have clear explanations. At the beginning, I thought that difference made us stronger. Balance, we called it. We had been married just over 5 years, together almost 8. The house we lived in, it was mine before we ever met. My grandfather left it to me. I spent 2 years rebuilding it, piece by piece, before Aaron ever walked through the front door. That matters later. For most of our marriage, I thought we were steady. Not exciting, not dramatic, just steady. Saturday mornings on the back porch with coffee. Wednesday takeout from the same Thai place down the street. An ongoing argument about whether the guest room should become an office or stay empty. Normal life. And normal life is underrated until someone decides it's not enough. About 8 months ago, Aaron got a new job in Durham. More travel, more late dinners, more team events that somehow never ended on time. At first, I didn't think much of it. New jobs take energy. I understood that. I've worked long enough to know sometimes work doesn't stay inside office hours. But then things started shifting. Subtle at first. He became protective of his phone. Not obviously. Not in a way you could point at and say, there. Just small things. Face down on the table. Taking it with him everywhere. Replying to messages in the laundry room like the washing machine needed emotional support. If I asked who kept texting, it was always work. If I asked why work needed him at 10:40 p.m., it became something else. You're being insecure. That word started showing up more often. Insecure. Rigid. Suspicious. Exhausting. And because I'm not someone who yells, because I've spent years believing that calm is stronger than chaos, I let it slide. I told myself trust mattered. I told myself marriage meant not turning every uneasy feeling into an interrogation. Then came Charleston. Aaron told me his company had a 2-night vendor conference there. Said he'd be in meetings all day, dinners at night. Probably too busy to text much. That sounded reasonable. I told him to have a good trip. Saturday evening, I was home alone, standing on the deck, flipping something on the grill I barely remember now, when my phone buzzed. Fraud alert from our shared airline card. It wasn't fraud. It was a hotel charge. Same hotel he said the company was covering. But there was an extra night added. 2 dinner charges. A spa charge. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Didn't call him. Didn't text. Just waited. When he got home Sunday afternoon, he walked in like everything was normal. Travel bag over one shoulder, sunglasses pushed into his hair, already talking about delayed valet and bad coffee in the hotel lobby. I let him finish. Every word. Then I placed my phone on the kitchen counter between us. Why did our card get charged for an extra night, I asked, if your company covered the hotel? He froze. not confused, not offended, just still. And in that moment, before he said anything, I already knew. He started with the usual explanations. Billing error, company reimbursement delay, a glitch. I listened. Then I asked, was Nora there with you? And that's when everything changed. Nora Whitaker, his regional manager, early 40s, polished, controlled, the kind of woman who called younger employees sweetheart like it was mentorship. I had met her once. She shook my hand without looking at me. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he said, "Why would you ask that?" And I said calmly, "Because you stopped denying there was a problem the second I said her name." That was the moment. He sat down, and then he started crying. I hate crying. I hate it when it's real. I hate it more when it arrives exactly on time. He said it wasn't what I thought. Said it wasn't an affair like that. Said it had become complicated, emotional, that he had felt overwhelmed, disconnected, seen in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. That word, seen. Apparently 5 years of marriage, shared bills, shared routines, shared life had made me invisible. I didn't respond to any of that. I just asked one question. Did you sleep with her? He looked down, and then he nodded. Just once. Just like it was something small enough to carry. I remember placing both hands on the counter, not because I was angry, because it felt more stable than anything else in that moment. And then he said the line that stayed with me. If you really believed in forgiveness, you'd let this go. Not "I'm sorry." Not "I understand if you leave." Not "I know I broke this." No. Straight to forgiveness. Like it was a tool, like it was something he could use. I looked at him, and I said, "I do believe in forgiveness." He looked relieved, for exactly half a second. Then I finished. "But you're still leaving." He blinked, like the sentence didn't make sense to him. "Vivian, that's not what forgiveness means." I nodded slowly. "For me," I said, "it means I'm not going to spend the next 10 years trying to punish you." I paused. "But it does not mean I keep you in my house and call it healing." He stood up then, started pacing, said I was being cold, that people make mistakes, that couples survive worse, that if I ended our marriage over one night, it would say just as much about me as it did about him. I almost admired that. The speed, the shift. He cheated, and within minutes, I was being evaluated. I asked him if Nora's husband knew. He said that wasn't my business. I picked up my keys. "It is now." That's when he panicked. "Not for me, for everything else." "Don't," he said, grabbing my arm. "Don't blow up lives because you're hurt." I looked at his hand, moved it away. "Aaron," I said quietly, "you blew up this life before you got home." Then I told him to pack a bag. Go to his sister Lily's. Not forever, just for the night. I needed space, distance, silence that wasn't being rewritten in real time. He refused at first, sat on the couch, crying, calling me unfair. Then he called Lily. I don't know what he said, but 40 minutes later she was outside. White SUV, hazard lights on. Aaron left with an overnight bag, his laptop, and that look people get when they were absolutely certain you would chase them. I locked the door behind him, and for the first time in years, the house was completely quiet. The quiet didn't feel empty. It felt clean. That was the first thing I noticed after Aaron left. Not loneliness, not panic, just the absence of noise I hadn't realized had been there for months. Small tensions, unspoken questions, the constant low hum of something not adding up. At 10:14 p.m., my phone lit up. "Aaron, please don't do anything rash. We need to talk with a clear head." Another message followed almost immediately. "I was honest with you. That has to count for something." And then the one that mattered. "Please don't contact my job." I stared at that last line longer than the others. That was the first sentence that sounded like the truth. Everything else? Framed, positioned, carefully arranged to make honesty sound like redemption instead of timing. I didn't reply. The next morning I called an attorney. Her name was Dana Whitlock, mid-50s, navy blazer, the kind of woman who didn't waste words and didn't need to raise her voice to control a room. By noon, I was sitting across from her, walking through the timeline like it was a report. Dates, behavior changes, the Charleston charges, the admission. She listened without interrupting, just took notes. Then she asked the questions that actually mattered. Any children? No. House ownership? Inherited. Before marriage? She nodded. Has he admitted the affair in writing? Not yet. She gave a small, knowing smile. He will. That turned out to be accurate. By Monday afternoon, I had screenshots saved, account passwords changed, financial records downloaded. Not to punish him. To protect myself. Because I could already feel it happening. The shift. The version of events that would turn accountability into cruelty. That night, I didn't sleep much, but what sleep I got felt clean. 3 days later, I knew two things for certain. First, Aaron thought I would calm down. Second, he had already started talking. Lily texted me Tuesday morning. I know you're hurt, but marriage requires grace. No hello. No, are you okay? Just a message that sounded like it had been drafted and approved. I replied once. Grace is not the same thing as staying married to someone who cheated on me. Her response came fast. It was one mistake. He's under a lot of stress. Strong marriages get tested. And don't let pride destroy what forgiveness could restore. That last line felt familiar. It sounded like Aaron. Big words. No ownership. I didn't respond again. At 10 o'clock that morning, I met Dana again. She reviewed everything I had collected. Then she leaned back slightly and said, "You're doing this correctly." I almost laughed. Because it didn't feel like I was doing anything. It felt like I was just not unraveling. Wednesday afternoon, the email came. Subject line, "We need to talk about forgiveness." Of course it was. I opened it. 4 long paragraphs, carefully written. He said he had been spiritually lost. That Nora made him feel alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. That the hotel was a moment of weakness, not a pattern. That he came home and told me because he believed in us. Because our marriage mattered. And then there it was. The line Dana had predicted. I never denied that what happened with Nora was wrong. I read that sentence twice. Then I saved it. Clean, clear, useful. At the end of the email, he wrote, "If you can't forgive me, at least don't destroy me." That line sat with me longer than the rest. Because I hadn't done anything. I hadn't called his job. I hadn't contacted Nora's husband. I hadn't told anyone. I had asked him to leave for one night and hired a lawyer. And somehow, in his mind, consequences already felt like destruction. Thursday evening, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera first. Aaron. And Lily. She was holding a foil tray like it was part of a performance. He looked put together. Hair done. Soft expression. The version of himself designed to be forgiven. I opened the main door. Left the screen locked. Aaron lifted the tray slightly. "I made dinner," he said with a small, careful smile. "Can we just talk?" "We are talking," I replied. "Through a door." Lily rolled her eyes. Aaron started crying almost immediately. On cue. "I've had time to think," he said. "I know what I did was wrong. I know it hurt you." I said nothing. I don't think this should end everything," he continued. "Not if you believe in what we had." There it was again. Belief. Forgiveness. Concepts. Repurposed. I spoke calmly. "Dana will be sending separation papers." He blinked, like I had switched languages mid-sentence. "Separation?" he said. "Vivian, no, that's extreme." "No," I said. "What's extreme is sleeping with your boss and coming home expecting applause because you admitted it after a billing alert." That landed. Lily stepped forward then. Protective. Defensive. "You're humiliating him," she said. "You're speaking to him without compassion." I looked at her. "Tell everyone who's praying for him," I said evenly, "to keep praying. The paperwork is still coming." Aaron's face crumpled. "Are you really going to throw away 5 years?" he asked, "over one mistake?" I held his gaze. "No," I said quietly. "You threw it away. I'm just handling what's left." He cried harder. Real or not, I wasn't sure anymore. At some point, it stopped mattering. Before he left, he asked one more thing. "Can you at least promise you won't tell Nora's husband?" I didn't hesitate. "I won't promise you anything." That was the moment his fear became visible. Not about losing me. About everything else unraveling. They left not long after that. The tray of food still in Lily's hands. Untouched. That night, I got a call I wasn't expecting. His mother, Marcia. She had always been polite with me. Never warm, never cold, just controlled. "Vivian," she said, "Aaron told me there was an indiscretion." "That's one word for it," I replied. There was a pause. Then she asked very quietly, "Did he sleep with her?" "Yes." Another pause. Longer this time. "And did he really tell you forgiveness meant letting it go?" "Yes." Silence. And then, "I'm sorry," she said. "Not for him. For me." That caught me off guard. Then she said something I didn't expect. "Forgiveness is what guilty people ask for when they still want the benefits of trust." I didn't respond right away, because there was nothing to add to that. By Friday, Dana had everything ready. By Saturday, Aaron was texting from a new number. "Can I come by and get a few things before this goes too far?" I stared at the message. "This goes too far." I didn't reply. Dana did. 2.5 weeks later, the tone changed. It wasn't immediate. At first, it was subtle, like everything else with Aaron had been. The messages stopped sounding like speeches. They started sounding smaller, less certain. The first one came as a voicemail. I miss my house. Not our house. My house. I listened to it once, then saved it. Didn't respond. A day later, a message came through Lily's phone. Aaron says Nora wasn't the problem. She was a symptom. I actually paused at that, because it was almost impressive. The way language could be rearranged to make responsibility feel abstract. Symptoms. As if betrayal was something that happened to him. As if it had simply appeared. I didn't reply to that either, but the messages didn't stop. They multiplied. A man from Aaron's church group messaged me on Facebook. I didn't know him well, just enough to recognize his face. Women of character choose restoration over resentment. I read it twice, then replied with one line. Women of character usually start by not sleeping with their boss. Blocked him after that. A few days later, Aaron's friend, Kelsey, somehow found my work email. She wrote 3 paragraphs about how Aaron was doing the work, about how reconciliation was still possible if I stopped weaponizing silence. Silence. I stared at that word for a long time, because silence was the only thing in this situation that hadn't been manipulated. I forwarded the email to Dana. Her reply came 10 minutes later. Useful. Save it. By then there was a folder. Screenshots, emails, voicemails, call logs, camera footage, everything. Not because I wanted to use it, because I refused to be rewritten. Then came the flowers, white hydrangeas, my least favorite. Left on the porch in a glass vase with a note tucked beneath the ribbon. Forgiveness creates new beginnings. I picked them up, brought them inside, removed the note, washed the vase, and threw the flowers away. Because symbolism only works when both people agree on what it means. The turning point came on a Thursday, 5:40 p.m. I was still at work when the front desk called up. There's someone here asking for you, the receptionist said carefully. She's upset. I didn't need to ask who. Tell him to leave. I tried, she said. He's already in the lobby. Of course he was. By the time I got downstairs, Aaron was standing there, eyes red. Mascara. No, not mascara. Just raw exhaustion. The kind that doesn't come from one bad night. From something collapsing. He chose her, he said before I even spoke. I didn't react. He said it was a mistake, Aaron continued, stepping closer, that he's staying with his wife. There it was. The truth behind the truth. Not regret. Not clarity. Rejection. He wasn't here because he had rediscovered me. He was here because the other door had closed. I'm sorry, I said quietly, that you destroyed your life for someone who wouldn't even stand in it with you. He flinched, like the words had weight. I know I was wrong, he said quickly. I know that now. Isn't this where forgiveness comes in? Different tone. Same script. Just stripped down. I took a breath. Dana has instructed that all communication goes through attorneys. His face shifted, from pleading to frustration. Attorneys are making this cruel, he said. Formal, cold. I held his gaze. Adultery made it formal. Security had started watching us by then. He noticed. Stepped back. But not before saying one more thing. You're enjoying this. That almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny. Because it was so completely detached from reality. There is nothing enjoyable about watching someone burn down a life. And then blame the ashes. That weekend, things escalated. I was at my older sister Claire's house. Her daughter's birthday. Backyard full of balloons, kids running around, sugar and noise and something close to normal. For the first time in weeks, I felt present. Until Claire looked past me toward the driveway and said, "You've got to be kidding me." I turned. White SUV. Of course. Aaron stepped out, holding a gift bag and a casserole dish. I didn't move. Claire did. She walked halfway down the driveway and stopped him before he reached the house. I just need 5 minutes, Aaron said. Please. For what? Claire asked. To apologize to everyone. That alone told me everything. He wasn't here for me. He was here for an audience. I need them to see that I'm trying, he continued. Maybe if they understand, they can help her soften. Help me soften. I almost smiled. My mother stepped out onto the porch then. She didn't rush, didn't raise her voice. She just crossed her arms and said, "Aaron, you need to leave." He started crying again, right there in the driveway. "I'm not a bad person," he said. "People make mistakes. I deserve a chance to fix this." My mother didn't move. "No," she said calmly. "You made it harder when you slept with another woman and came home asking for forgiveness like it erased anything." Claire turned away slightly. I could tell she was trying not to laugh. Aaron looked at me then, straight at me, in front of everyone. "If you ever loved me," he said, "don't let this be the end of our story." I met his eyes. "It ended in Charleston," I said. "We're just waiting on the paperwork." The casserole slipped from his hands. Glass shattered on the driveway. Red sauce everywhere. One of the kids started crying from the noise. Claire stepped forward immediately. You need to leave, she said, sharper this time. Aaron didn't move. So Claire pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police. That did it. Aaron backed away, got into the SUV, drove off before anyone arrived. My mother watched the car disappear, then said, just loud enough for all of us to hear, that boy thinks remorse is a performance. Monday morning, Dana filed for a temporary no-contact provision. Not dramatic, not emotional, just documented behavior, repeated appearances, unwanted contact. It was enough. By then, even Lily had gone quiet, and for the first time since Charleston, Aaron had run out of versions of himself that sounded convincing. The divorce didn't happen all at once. There was no single moment where everything just ended. It was slower than that. Administrative, measured, like dismantling something carefully instead of watching it collapse. By the time we reached mediation, Aaron looked different. Not physically, structurally. Like something inside him had stopped trying to hold everything together. The confidence was gone. The certainty. Even the way he spoke had changed. Less polished, less controlled, fewer big words, more pauses. Reality had finally caught up to language. He tried one last angle. The house. He wanted equity in it. Said he had built a life there. Contributed to it. That it wasn't fair to walk away with nothing. Dana shut that down in under 5 minutes. Inherited property. Premarital asset. Separate title. There was no argument to be made. So he pivoted. Asked for a larger cash settlement instead. Said the emotional fallout had destabilized his work. That almost impressed me. The reach. The audacity. Dana's response was calm, professional, and final. What actually happened was simpler. Nora's husband found out. I never contacted him. I didn't have to. Truth has a way of moving on its own when enough people are involved. Nora was reported internally. Aaron was no longer an asset to his company. He resigned before anything became official. None of that had anything to do with me. But I could see, in the way he avoided my eyes, that he wished it did. It would have been easier to blame me, to turn consequence into cruelty. At mediation, he said something that almost sounded honest. I hope one day you understand, he said quietly, that what I did came from brokenness, not malice. I nodded. I already understand that. He looked relieved, for a second. Then I finished. Broken people still make choices. That ended the conversation. The settlement wasn't dramatic. He kept his car. I paid a modest amount tied to joint savings we had built together. He took his furniture, his art. The espresso machine he insisted had changed his life, and every decorative pillow in the house. I kept the house, my truck, my accounts, my quiet. It was, in a strange way, the most balanced division we could have had. A week after everything was finalized, Marcia called again. I'm not asking for anything, she said. I just wanted you to know. I told Aaron to stop using the word forgiveness until he learns what apology means. I didn't say much, but I appreciated it more than she probably realized. Work changed too. For months, I had been moving through my days like there was static inside my chest. A constant noise I couldn't turn off. Once everything was done, it disappeared. I started sleeping through the night again. Started running in the mornings. Started eating dinner at my own table without wondering what silence meant. Peace stopped feeling suspicious. It just felt normal. A few weeks later, I got moved into a senior operations role. Better salary. More responsibility. Ironically, easier than managing someone else's moral contradictions. And then, about 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I met Daniel Ross. He was a physical therapist, friend of a coworker, 33. Quiet in a way that didn't feel distant. Just grounded. Our first date was coffee. Nothing dramatic. No lightning. No intensity. Just ease. At one point, I told him, half joking, that my last relationship had taught me something. That some people think forgiveness means you should hold the door open while they drag chaos back inside. He laughed, softly, then said, that sounds less like forgiveness, and more like unpaid labor. I looked at him for a second longer than I meant to, because it was the first time someone had said it, without needing explanation. We didn't rush anything. No urgency. No performance. Just consistency. And that felt new in a way I didn't expect. As for Aaron, I still hear things. Raleigh isn't that big. He tells people I punished him for being honest, that I refused to fight for our marriage, that I turned forgiveness into a weapon. It's almost impressive, the way some narratives survive, even after they collapse. But the people who know the full story don't believe it. Not after the office visit, not after the birthday, not after everything that followed. Here's what I learned. Forgiveness is not permission. It is not access. It is not pretending trust wasn't broken just because someone cried hard enough. It is not keeping a door open for someone who only wants back in because their other option failed. I do forgive Aaron. I mean that. I don't wake up angry. I don't replay conversations. I didn't spend months trying to destroy his life. He handled that on his own. But forgiveness is about what I carry. Reconciliation is about what I allow. Those are not the same thing. He wanted forgiveness to erase consequences. I wanted it to mean I could let go without letting him back in. That's the difference between guilt and accountability, between apology and access, between peace and performance. And once I understood that, everything else became simple. My name is Evelyn Foster. I'm 34 years old, and the moment everything changed didn't feel dramatic. It felt quiet. So quiet that if you weren't paying attention, you might have missed it entirely. My boyfriend once looked at me in a hospital hallway, just outside the room where my mother was dying, and said, "I can't put my life on hold waiting for this to be over." And I remember something inside me didn't break. It went still. Not anger, not panic, just clarity. I looked at him and said, "Okay." At the time, I don't think Ethan understood what that meant. But I did. I've been teaching chemistry at Lincoln High for almost 10 years. It's not glamorous. It doesn't make headlines. But it's real. It matters. I've never needed more than that. Ethan Caldwell was different. He was 32. Pharmaceutical sales, fast-paced, high energy, always chasing the next deal, the next impression, the next upgrade. Where I built stability, he built momentum. We had been together for 3.5 years, long enough to believe we understood each other, long enough to assume loyalty didn't need to be questioned. 8 months ago, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors said a year, maybe less. She was all I had. My father left when I was 6. No explanations, no closure, just absence. It had been me and her ever since. So when she got sick, I didn't hesitate. I took leave from work, moved back into my childhood home, became her full-time caregiver. Chemo appointments, medications, cooking meals she could barely keep down, sitting beside her bed at night when the pain wouldn't let her sleep, learning how to sound calm when I was terrified. Ethan told me he understood. At first, he did. He came by after work, brought food, sat with us, talked like everything was normal. But then, things shifted. Month 3, his visits got shorter. Month 4, less frequent. Then came the excuses. I'm swamped. Work's insane right now. You know how demanding this job is. And I believed him, not because it made sense. Because I didn't have the energy to question it. When you're in survival mode, you accept whatever support shows up, even if it's incomplete. You call it love, because you're too exhausted to ask for more. Last Tuesday night, my mom took a turn for the worse. Fever, weakness. She couldn't keep anything down. The hospital admitted her for observation. I had been there since 6 in the morning, sitting beside her bed, watching the rise and fall of her chest, listening to the machines that measured time in quiet, relentless beeps. Around 11 that night, I stepped into the hallway to get coffee. That's when I saw him. Ethan. I hadn't told him we were at the hospital. I had stopped updating him days ago, because his silence had already told me how much those updates mattered. He walked toward me, perfectly put together, hairstyled, shirt crisp, like he had prepared for something. Just not this. "Hey," he said. I looked at him for a moment. "Hey, what are you doing here?" He shifted his weight slightly, like the ground beneath him wasn't stable. "We need to talk." There's a specific kind of feeling when your body knows what's about to happen, before your mind catches up. My stomach dropped. I glanced back toward my mom's room. Through the glass, I could see her sleeping, machines blinking steadily, alive but fragile. "Now?" I asked quietly. "Yeah, now." He took a breath. "I've been trying to find the right time," he said, "but there isn't one." And then he said it. "I can't do this anymore, Evelyn. I can't put my life on hold waiting for it to be over." The words didn't echo. They just landed. Heavy. Final. Waiting for it to be over. He wasn't talking about the situation. He was talking about my mother, about her dying, like it was an inconvenience, like it was a delay in his life. I stared at him, not because I didn't understand, but because I suddenly understood everything. The distance, the excuses, the slow withdrawal. This wasn't a breaking point. It was an exit strategy. Part of me expected anger to rise, to ask him how he could be so cold. But what I felt instead was emptiness. Like something inside me had already detached before this moment even arrived. So I said the only thing that felt true. "Okay." He blinked, like he was waiting for more, for a reaction, for a fight that would make this easier for him. But I didn't give him that. What do you want me to say? I continued, my voice steady. You came to a hospital where my mom is dying to break up with me. You've already made your decision. He opened his mouth slightly, maybe to explain, maybe to soften it. But I didn't let him. I turned, walked back into my mom's room, sat down beside her, took out my phone, and removed him from my life. Deleted his number. Blocked him everywhere. No message. No goodbye. Just silence. My mom slept through all of it. She never knew what happened in that hallway. And somehow, I was grateful for that. That was 4 days ago. I'm sitting here now in the same house I grew up in. It's 2 a.m. I haven't slept. The hospice nurse says it could be any day now. Hours, maybe. Ethan hasn't contacted me. Not once. No message. No apology. Nothing. And I keep waiting to feel something. Anger. Sadness. Anything. But there's just quiet. Maybe I used everything I had watching my mom fade. Or maybe when someone shows you exactly who they are at your worst moment, there's nothing left to question. 3 weeks later, my mom passed away on a Monday morning at 6:47 a.m. I was holding her hand when it happened. The room was quiet. No alarms, no panic, just a slow, gentle stillness that settled over everything. Peaceful. That's the word people use. And for once, it didn't feel like a lie. I remember staring at her face after, trying to memorize something that had already started slipping away. The lines I had known my whole life suddenly looked unfamiliar, like I was seeing them from a distance instead of inside them. A nurse touched my shoulder softly. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn." I nodded. But the truth was, I didn't know what I was supposed to feel anymore. The funeral was that Friday. Small, quiet, respectful. A few cousins flew in, some of her old colleagues from the school where she had taught for over 20 years, a couple of neighbors who had known us since I was a kid, and my colleagues from Lincoln High. Everyone spoke softly, moved carefully, like grief might shatter if handled too roughly. I stood there through all of it, accepting condolences, thanking people, nodding at things I barely registered. And yes, there was a part of me that kept looking toward the entrance. Not because I wanted him there, but because after 3.5 years, showing up felt like the bare minimum of being human. Ethan didn't come. No message. No flowers. No note. Nothing. That absence didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It just confirmed something. Rashid stayed by my side the entire time. He handled everything I didn't have the capacity for. Made sure I ate. Took my phone when it buzzed too much. Sat with me in the silence when the house felt too empty. After the funeral, as people started leaving, a man in a suit approached me. "Evelyn Foster?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm your mother's attorney. When you're ready, we need to schedule a meeting regarding her estate." I remember thinking it would be simple. The house, a small savings account, some personal belongings. My mom was a teacher. She lived modestly. Money wasn't something that ever defined our life. We scheduled the meeting for Monday. I walked into that office expecting paperwork and closure. Instead, I walked into a version of my life I didn't recognize. The lawyer sat across from me, calm, composed, like this was just another routine conversation. "Your mother left you approximately $2.8 million in various accounts and investments," he said. I stared at him. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because it didn't make sense. "I think you have the wrong file," I said. He smiled politely. "I assure you I don't." He turned a folder toward me. Documents, statements, signatures, all real, all mine. "And in addition," he continued, "you've inherited a 28% equity stake in a company called Tech Vista Solutions. This includes a seat on the board." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because nothing in my life had prepared me for that sentence. "I don't understand," I said finally. And that's when he explained. My uncle, my mom's older brother, had passed away in 2019. I knew he was successful. I didn't know he was this successful. He had built Tech Vista decades ago. And when he died, he left everything to my mom. Everything. She just never told me. She kept teaching, kept living in the same house, driving the same car. The lawyer said she had been very clear about her reasoning. "She wanted you to build your own life first," he said, "to understand work, responsibility, independence. She planned to tell you when the time was right." Cancer didn't give her that time. I sat in that office for 2 hours, staring at numbers that didn't feel like they belonged to me, at a story I didn't know I was part of. Rashid had to come pick me up because I wasn't in any condition to drive. That night, I sat on the floor of my mom's living room with a glass of whiskey I barely tasted and a pizza I didn't remember ordering, trying to process the fact that everything I thought I knew about my life had missing chapters. A few days later, Rashid was sitting across from me, scrolling through his phone. He went quiet. That kind of quiet that feels deliberate. "Don't look," he said. Which of course meant I immediately reached for the phone. "What is it?" He hesitated, then handed it over. It was a post. Tagged location, Le Pigeon. A restaurant I had only ever seen in photos. The kind of place you don't go unless you're celebrating something or proving something. The photo showed Ethan, Madison, and two other people I didn't recognize. Everyone dressed perfectly. Glasses of wine, smiles that looked effortless and expensive. That polished, curated version of happiness. The caption mentioned an upgrade, and it tagged someone. Brielle Caldwell. I clicked her profile. Conference photos, luxury settings, a watch that probably cost more than my yearly salary. Title, VP of Sales. And then I saw the date. The post had gone up. The day after my mom's funeral. I felt something then. Not anger. Not even sadness. Clarity. Sharp, clean, unavoidable. It wasn't about timing. It was about priorities. Ethan didn't leave because he couldn't handle my mom being sick. He didn't leave because I wasn't present enough. He left because he found something better. Or at least, something that looked better on paper. Someone with status, money, momentum. Someone who didn't come with hospital rooms and quiet suffering. And suddenly, that hallway made perfect sense. It wasn't just cruel. It was efficient. He chose the moment when I had nothing left to give. So he wouldn't have to deal with anything complicated. I handed the phone back to Rashid. "Block them," I said. "All of them." He studied my face. "You sure?" I nodded. "If he tries to reach me through you, don't respond." Rashid didn't ask any more questions. He just did it. And later that night, sitting alone in that house, I thought about my mom, about how she lived like money didn't exist, because she wanted me to learn how to live without depending on it. About how she protected me, not by giving me everything, but by giving me the chance to become someone on my own. And I realized something else. Ethan showed me exactly who he was, before I ever knew what I had, which meant I would never have to wonder if he would have stayed, if things were different, because he already answered that. There's a kind of clarity in that. Painful, but clean. And then I remembered something from that meeting. Something small that hadn't fully registered at the time. When the lawyer showed me the TechVista documents, there was a directory. Names, positions, structure, and one name stood out. Vice President of Sales, reporting directly to the CEO. Brielle Caldwell. The same woman from that photo. The same upgrade. The same life Ethan chose. And the same company that I now owned 28% of. Small world. 6 weeks later, life didn't feel real yet. It felt rearranged. Like someone had taken everything I thought I understood about myself and shifted it slightly out of alignment. There were documents to sign, meetings to attend, conversations I wasn't emotionally ready for, but had to sit through anyway. Grief didn't disappear. It just changed shape. It came in waves. Quiet moments. Walking into a room and remembering no one would answer you anymore. Reaching for your phone to text someone who no longer existed. And underneath all of that, there was something else. Clarity. Word got out about the inheritance. It always does. Quietly at first, then faster. Professional circles talk. Legal circles talk even more. And that's when Ethan started trying to reach me. Blocked calls. New numbers. Messages that slipped through before I could shut them down. "I heard about your mom. I'm so sorry. Can we talk? I made a mistake. I still care about you." I read every message. Not because I was considering responding. Because I wanted to see how far he would go. How he would explain something that didn't need explaining. I never replied. Silence is often misunderstood. People think it means avoidance or weakness. Sometimes it's just the most honest answer you have. Rashid told me Madison tried calling him too. He shut it down immediately. Then another piece came in. From Tasha, his girlfriend. She worked in recruiting, which meant she heard things before most people did. "Brielle knows," she said. "Knows what?" I asked. "Who you are." That landed differently. "The new board member, the one who inherited the stake in TechVista," she continued. "She knows you're Ethan's ex." I didn't react, but something in my chest shifted. "And there's more," she added carefully. "Layoffs are coming. Board vote, around 10% across departments. Sales is at risk." Sales. Brielle's department. Suddenly, the dynamic changed. Ethan wasn't just someone from my past anymore. He was connected, indirectly, to decisions that now had my name attached to them. His messages started changing tone, less casual, more urgent. "Please respond. Brielle keeps asking about you." "This is complicated." I read them the same way. without emotion, without response. My first board meeting was in week 6. It was on Zoom. I kept my camera off. Said I was recovering from being sick. It wasn't entirely untrue. Grief has a way of settling into your body. The CEO, Philip Torres, welcomed me, offered condolences, and moved straight into business. No dramatics, no unnecessary attention. Just numbers, projections, decisions. Then the layoff discussion came up. Departments, percentages, strategy. And then Brielle Caldwell started speaking. I recognized her immediately, even through a screen. Confident voice, controlled posture, but there was something underneath it. Tension. She kept glancing at the participant list, at my name, Evelyn Foster. I watched her present. Data, forecasts, justifications. I asked a few questions. Neutral, professional, nothing personal. Never used her name, never acknowledged the connection. To me, she was just another executive presenting numbers. At the end, I made one suggestion. We should delay the final decision until next month, I said. We need more accurate revenue data before making cuts that affect long-term performance. Philip considered it, then nodded. Agreed. Meeting adjourned. That was it. No confrontation, no power play, just restraint. But even through the screen, I saw it. Brielle's expression. Tight, uncertain, like she was trying to understand something she couldn't control. There's a kind of power in that. Not using your position to make something personal. Not because you're above it, because you're done letting people pull you into chaos. Week 7, Ethan escalated. He started showing up at my mom's old house. I had already moved most of my things back to my apartment, but I still went there to pack, organize, prepare to sell. He would sit in his car across the street, waiting. If he saw me, he would follow for a few blocks, then stop, like he didn't know what to do once he got close. The messages didn't stop. Calls, texts, apologies. Then a letter, handwritten, 5 pages. An old photo album, memories. I didn't open it. Didn't read past the first paragraph. I put everything in a box and donated it. A few days later, a message came through. You donated our memories. Read. No response. Week 9, he tried something different. LinkedIn, work email, professional channels. Then his sister, Kelsey. I answered by accident. Evelyn, please, she said immediately. Ethan's a mess. Can you just talk to him? I closed my eyes for a second. Not because I was considering it, because I needed to keep my voice steady. Tell him to stop contacting me. He loves you, she corrected quickly. He just got scared when your mom got sick. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't argue. I just said the truth. He ended things with me in a hospital hallway while my mom was dying. Silence. Then I added, and he posted photos with someone else the day after her funeral. Another silence. I don't care if he was scared, I said. I'm done. Then I hung up. Blocked the number. Week 10, Tech Vista met again. Layoffs happened. 10% across the board. Sales was hit the hardest. Brielle survived. Barely. Then something unexpected happened. A contact from my teaching network, someone in educational software, reached out. We had worked together on a small project years ago. He was looking for a tech partner. The deal turned into an $8 million contract with Tech Vista. Philip called me personally. Your connection secured this, he said. You just stabilized the sales division. That meant something. Not emotionally, but strategically. Brielle's position was now safer because of something I brought in. Not for her, for the company, for my uncle's legacy, for my mom. The irony didn't escape me. From what Tasha heard, Ethan and Brielle's relationship was already starting to fracture. Arguments, tension, the same patterns. You're not present. You're distracted. This isn't working. The same words, different context. Week 11, the messages stopped. No calls, no texts, no letters, just silence. And it felt strange. Not peaceful, not yet. More like the quiet before something shifts. Because people like Ethan don't just disappear. Not without a reason. 14 weeks after the breakup, I was writing from a place that didn't feel like my past anymore. I sold my mom's house. Not because I didn't love it. Because every room held a version of her that wasn't there anymore. I needed space that didn't echo. So I bought a condo downtown. Clean lines, open windows, a place where silence felt like choice, not absence. I started therapy, twice a week. At first, I didn't know what to say. Grief is strange like that. It sits in your chest, heavy and present, but when someone asks you to describe it, there are no clean sentences. So we talked about everything around it. My dad leaving, growing up too fast, learning how to be the stable one before I even understood what stability meant. and how that made me the kind of person who could carry everything quietly. The kind of person someone like Ethan could rely on without ever truly showing up in return. That realization didn't hurt the way I expected. It felt clarifying, like finally understanding a pattern instead of just living inside it. I used part of the inheritance to set up a scholarship in my mom's name, $50,000 a year, for students going into teaching. The first award ceremony was scheduled a month later. I knew she would have loved that. Not the money, the purpose. I also planned a trip. New Zealand. It had always been on her list. Places she wanted to see, but never made time for. So I went. Not just for me, for both of us. Tech Vista meetings continued. Expansion plans, strategy discussions. I stayed involved, but at a distance. I didn't want to run a tech company. I wanted to protect it. Protect what my uncle built, what my mom quietly preserved. Brielle Caldwell was promoted. Vice president to senior vice president. Bigger title. More responsibility. After one of the meetings, she sent me an email. Short, professional. Thank you for your support on the recent contract. I appreciate your approach in the meetings. I read it once. Replied with one line. You're welcome. Focus on performance. That was it. No past. No acknowledgement. Just business. Then week 13, a message came through from an unknown number. This is Brielle. I ended things with Ethan. He's been hung up on you since the beginning. I need someone who's actually present. I thought you should know. I stared at the screen longer than I expected. Not because I cared about the outcome. Because of the words. Actually present. The same logic. The same reasoning. Just redirected. Karma doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it shows up quietly. Repeating a sentence you've already heard before. I didn't reply. Blocked the number. The next night, another message came through. Ethan. I don't know how he got through, but he did. And this time, I read it. It was long. Apologies. Regret. Explanations. I made a mistake. I thought I was choosing the right path. I didn't understand what I had. I lost everything. He wrote about Brielle leaving him, about realizing too late what he had done, about how he finally understood the weight of that hospital moment. And then, I'm sorry, I read it at 11:34 p.m., sitting in my new apartment. Boxes still half unpacked, a life still in transition. And for a second, I felt something. Not love, not anger, just recognition of who he was and who he had always been. Because therapy had already taught me something important. There's a difference between regret and accountability. Regret is about loss. Accountability is about understanding the harm you caused. Ethan didn't reach out when my mom died. Didn't show up when it mattered. Didn't care when I had nothing to offer. He reached out after everything fell apart for him. After his upgrade failed. After he was alone. That's not growth. That's panic. If Brielle hadn't left him, that message wouldn't exist. If the inheritance never happened, he would still be living that other life, posting photos, calling it progress. I looked at the screen one last time, then locked my phone. No reply. And there never will be one. Because closure is not something you owe someone who used your hardest moment as their exit. A few weeks later, I was sitting in a cafe in Auckland, overlooking the harbor. The air felt different there, lighter, like it didn't carry the same weight as everything I had left behind. That morning, I did something my mom would have both loved and hated. I went bungee jumping. Off the sky tower. She would have been terrified. And then she would have done it anyway. That was her. The scholarship ceremony happened while I was away. Rashid sent photos. 3 students, all going into education. One of them, a girl raised by a single mother, planning to teach chemistry. I cried when I read her essay. Not because it was sad. Because it felt full circle. I heard Ethan move to Seattle. New job. New start. That's what people call it. Starting over. But some things don't reset. They follow you. Quietly. In patterns. In choices. In consequences. Sometimes late at night, I reread that message he sent. Not because I'm tempted to respond. Because it reminds me of something. He hurt me, and I healed. He stayed exactly where his choices left him. That's not revenge. That's consequence. Someone once asked me if I felt bad for not replying. For leaving him without closure. Honestly? No. He wanted something from me. A response. Forgiveness. Anger. Anything that would make him feel less guilty. I gave him nothing. Not to punish him, because I genuinely had nothing left to give. Tomorrow I'm flying to Iceland. The northern lights are supposed to be visible this time of year. I'm going to stand outside, look up, and let my mind be quiet. Because sometimes the worst moments in your life show you the clearest truth. Sometimes the people who leave do you a favor they never intended. And sometimes silence